Hey guys, Shew here from Crypto Consulting Institute, and we've had a bit of a funny experience here in the sense that I've managed to rope in my videographer for the day, who's in the firing line, you might say. I'm going to use him as an example, effectively, of a newer person that's in the space, or someone that's been in the space a little while now. And I'm going to ask him some questions and then address some opportunities and ideas of how he can effectively improve what he's doing to get a better performance and outcome from his crypto investing. So please welcome Beau to the screen.
G'day, dude. It's good. It's good to, we shoot a lot of content together, and it's good to see kind of behind the curtain of who this guy is, but we've never actually made it practical for myself and made it personalized for me. So we literally had this idea and we just kind of hit go and started rolling. So
absolutely, and I think having it a lot more casual and a conversation will help bring out hopefully some ideas and opportunities for you listening. So what I first want to understand is, how did you get into crypto and where are you at currently on your journey?
So for me, I just literally, I get frustrated when I don't understand things, and I had a few friends that were like talking about cryptocurrency and how they used to, they got burned back in 2017. They're like, oh yeah, crypto space, oh, we got wrecked, as they'd say. And I used to be like, oh, okay, cool, I don't really understand. I didn't really understand stocks. So then maybe early 2020, I started looking into it, and that's when the COVID crash kind of happened, and yeah, Bitcoin fully crashed. I didn't even realize, but I just literally looked into it for a bit. I think I got a CoinSpot account, and I threw like $2 or $3 grand. I think Bitcoin, ETH, and I think some other random altcoins. And then just didn't touch it for like 3 months, kind of forgot about it, and then came back and it had almost like 4x'd. And I just went, oh my gosh, what is this space? And from there kind of went a bit deeper and kind of, a lot more of just researching myself and looking into the space and kind of what the technology is, and then how to, it's been a lot of learning since then, I guess. But,
awesome, mate, fantastic. And what was it that prompted you to get back into the space in 2020? Because I think a lot of people have been through similar scenarios where maybe they chucked a bit of money in through the hype of 2017, the market corrected, they kind of forgot about it, and then later, as there's been a bit more of a transition back into the performance of cryptocurrencies, a lot more people have resurfaced, you might say.
Yeah.
So what was the driving force for you to say, hold on a second, I need to have another look at this?
I think I get quite frustrated with like the normal economic system. Like I'm quite a diligent saver, but then I find I'm getting 1% on my savings, and that's like a high interest account that I've really I'm jumping through hoops just to get access to. And for me, I got frustrated, and I was like, there's got to be a better way of getting ahead and of making my money actually work for me without having to quit my job and go fully into day trading and all that risky stuff, because no one can. I got frustrated with my lack of options, and then I saw cryptocurrency and people talk about it, and it's this speculative thing, and I just looked at the tech and I went, there's got to be something in this. And then obviously since then we've kind of had a pretty intense a boom in the space itself. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the reality for a lot of people now, where they realize what they're doing right now, whether that's investing in stocks or even property. Even though we've had a really good run up in property, if you compare that to the likes and the performance of something like cryptocurrency, it's apple and pears. And that's why there's so many people, not only retail investors, but funds that are transitioning into cryptocurrency right now, because they see the data and they see the performance and they see the transition, the natural evolution of money and where we're going and where we've come from. And that's what really appeals to people to get into the space, is exactly like yourself, Beau. It's what's going on, what's my reality right now, where do I want to go, and if I keep doing the same thing, is it really going to get me there? Which is no doubt why you've opened up to crypto, which is fantastic. So a question for you, because I think one of the big things that most people struggle with when getting into the space is, I've got some money, I want to invest, what do I buy? Because there's so much hype online. You can go on YouTube and you get told, here's the latest and greatest cryptocurrencies, or there's so many different, I guess, ideas and opportunities and influential people that are trying to twist your rubber arm into invest in this project because I'll get paid if you do. So how do you go around identifying what to actually invest into? What's been your protocol for that, or where do you feel the gaps are for you as well?
I get a lot of people that have known nothing about the space asking me for advice, and it's ridiculous because I'm like, I am in no way the master of anything. You know, I've been in this space for almost 2 years, so I'm very much still learning as well. But what I have learned has been because I've been burned already, and so I can kind of look back and go, oh, you know what? Dogecoin wasn't going to $10. And I can look back and go, oh, that makes sense. Why was that a bad idea? Or why was that a bad investment to jump onto this, you know, this company that they had a really good roadmap? But their team couldn't deliver. Oh, okay, awesome. And next time I'll look through the team and actually check their LinkedIns. It's like, are these real people? What's their experience been? What's their connections? What are the tokenomics of this coin? Oh, wait, they can just print more of them? Oh, well, that doesn't work. Like, that's not going to work. Just so educating myself because of bad decisions in the past, which is, look, not a good or a bad thing, I guess, but people seem to think, oh, you've had a lot of wins. I've had some wins because I've had a lot of losses. Yeah,
absolutely. And I appreciate your honesty around it. So I think that's a really valid point to raise, because it's certainly very similar to my own journey. When I started 7 years ago in the space, I naturally made some mistakes, but fortunately I had a very long background of investing in stocks. So it was it was a much easier transition for me, and that's what helped me to build out effectively the same blueprint that we share with our clients today. And if you are newer to the space and you want to get into it, you have to have a framework, a plan of attack where you can go and analyze stuff, and you don't necessarily want to learn through expensive lessons that we already have. It's about getting it right first time round and minimizing the risk and exposure of that, which is certainly an important part of the puzzle. Having a blueprint is going to give you consistency as well. So as you transition from one opportunity to the next, because there are a lot out there, you want to be able to filter them. So think of it as if you went down to the sea with an empty glass and you scooped up some salt water and drank it, it's not going to taste too fresh. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. But if you tip that same water into a filter, which is the blueprint effectively that we've created, and you purify it, it's going to get rid of all the toxins, meaning all the opportunities that aren't really right for you. Because what Beau invests into is going to be very different from me, because we're at different stages of our journey, but we're also of a very different risk profile too. So understanding this, instead of just kind of getting caught up in the hype of the meme tokens like the Dogecoins and your Shiba Inus, that, don't get me wrong, there is an opportunity to make a play into them, but it's a very high risk play which is speculative, and you would want to enter in and have your exit points and move out the market very quickly. Otherwise it could be a very expensive lesson, which some people have obviously learned the hard way. So I appreciate you sharing that. When it comes to your strategies, so it's another big area of concern for people. Quite simply, you've got the opportunity right now. When should I actually invest into the space? When's a good time to be buying? And when's a good time to be selling? So where are you positioned on that front? What does your exit strategy look like? How did you actually go around knowing when to buy, and what's your process there, mate?
I, again, have done a lot of FOMO deals, as in like looked at something, oh my gosh, this is just going to keep pumping, I got to get in. I've now I force myself to take at least a couple of days of like when I get really excited about a project, or if there's something that I've heard about and I've looked into and it checks out, and it looks like something I'd want to get into. I just force myself to take a day or two or to even like zoom out and look where things have been and not jump on the hype train, because things always end up correcting, and then you can have a much nicer entry point. And then depending on what kind of capital I've got to play with, so it depends. But I always I force myself to not just jump in straight away, and then be like, cool, what can I expect to get out of this, and then set a bit of an exit point, like not entirely, but when it hits this target, I'll pull out 30% or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. So it's a fairly general in nature. When it comes to the entry point, So you've identified the opportunity. How do you then go and say, okay, here's the 3 points that I want to enter in, and how much are you going to enter in at each level? Or is it, here's my opportunity, let's buy it?
Honestly, no, it's not as specific as that. I'll kind of just look at where it's been, like price action, where we've been, what's coming up, and then any sort of like news in the space, and be like, cool, can I expect this to keep going up from here, or will this probably come down from here? Maybe if it hits this point, then I'll jump in. And that's it. And so it's I don't generally space it out over time. I probably should DCA.
Not necessarily. So when it comes to the strategy side of things, what you can do is you identify core levels of when you're going to move into the market, and that can be percentages at each different level. Oh, sorry, we've got some beeping going on here. Oh, because I flicked out of gear. So from that, we can move out of or into the market at different percentages. So you shouldn't necessarily go 100% in at this level. I want to buy, I've got some money, let's go. It's identifying, here's an opportune level. If it dropped below that and it hit this next level, then I can move X% more in. And here's what we call in the team the kitchen sink, that if it hits this, then that's where the remainder will go in. That helps you to minimize some risk and exposure. So you're not kind of jumping all in and then the market moves back and you're thinking, why did I do that?
Yeah.
There will be some opportune times where absolutely you might go heavier straight away, but it's identifying that using data. So sure, there's market sentiment, there's other drivers that come into play where you say, here's an opportunity, here's something that's coming up or an announcement, but then it's picking apart with things like technical analysis and saying, well, here's some key support levels, here's a confluence of indicators that I'm looking at, and when it hits this area, this zone, here's my buy zone. And what I like to do on a platform like Trade and View, where I do my technical analysis, I will draw boxes on there to say, here's my zone 1, box for zone 2, and the same for the exit. And then on there, I can see as soon as I pull up the chart, I know exactly where we're at. And then I don't have to go in and reanalyze anything. I can make some quick decisions from there. I'll also use apps where I'll set up alerts. So when it hits a certain price trigger, I'll get an alert. If I don't necessarily automatically want to enter into the market, and naturally there's times where you can set auto buys, limit orders, but the problem with that is if you've got X amount of data today and that limit order, the buy order gets triggered in a month's time or 2 weeks' time, you've got an extra month of data. So therefore you might be able to make a more informed decision to say, hey, actually, it's probably not a good time to enter now because X, Y, Z just happened in the news. So that helps you to stay on top of it with an alert and a trigger in effectively around that, but not actually get triggered into a trade if you don't want to. Obviously, if you're playing on much shorter time frames and you want to get triggered, then sure, you can use that for both buy and sells. And then it's pulling in other sets of data. On-chain data is something that we're really big into, where you're able to pull apart effectively. Think of it as an X-ray machine. It tells you what's going on underneath. And on-chain data is all data that's drawn out from the blockchain. So it's not just for things like Bitcoin, Ethereum. There's a number of other coins as well that you can get that X-ray laser insight into what's happening. And to advance to that really sophisticated level of being a high-performing investor, it's picking that apart and really using the data to make those informed decisions. And the more accurate you are naturally with your buying and selling, the more money you're going to make in the space. But on top of that, it's the psychology. You know that when you're using the data to make those informed decisions, then from there, it's going to give you more confidence and certainty. So instead of chucking $500, $1,000 here or there, you can make much more significant investments into the space, which naturally is going to lead to a much higher return on investment. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question, where do you go to access your credible data? Because I know there's a lot of information out there. People jump on YouTube naturally and get sucked into or persuaded, you might say, by different marketers and everything else in between, or being told in a Facebook group from someone who hasn't even made their first 100K, this is what you should be buying right now. And it's a bit like, oh, which unfortunately people listen to them because they seem knowledgeable and they seem to have more information. So
Yeah.
what does that look like for you, mate?
There are a few, like I have my trusted news sources from on YouTube and a lot on Twitter as well. There's a lot of people in this space, but then like my thing is like people get paid for stuff, and it's like everything I take with a grain of salt. I don't actually I do very little actual like TA and like looking at like you said, the on-chain data and all that. I definitely need to incorporate that into my investment, the decision-making process, I guess. But yeah, for me, it's very more like fundamental analysis. Like, what is this project? What does it do? Analyzing tokenomics, who holds, how many wallets hold how much, what percentages. Looking at that sort of stuff is where I get a lot of my information from, if I want to move forward on something. And then generally, I'm more like long-term plays. So I'm not thinking in the next week or so to get a jump out again. So
so I'll share a couple of things that might be useful here. So number one, think of fundamental analysis as a piece of the puzzle. And if you pick up one piece of the puzzle and you try telling me what the whole image is, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So what we want to do is try and bring as many pieces of the puzzle together. So to map that out, some of the core pieces would be things like your technical analysis, absolutely, your on-chain data, your market sentiment and drivers, your fundamental analysis, and then the psychology, not only of the market, but of yourself. And when you bring all of those components together, that's what gives you a really well-rounded and well-balanced overview. The second thing that I would add to that is you mentioned about long-term plays. So as an investor, I don't think of time frames. I think of return on investment. I invest in a market to make money. I don't invest in a market to realize time. So with that being said, I will come in, I'll build out a strategy having different target zones to hit. If that's hit today, tomorrow, next week, next month, or in 5 years, it's irrelevant. It's my target zones that I really want to focus on and what I really care about. And that's why having all of the pieces combined together give you the clarity on, okay, it's not time, it's the return and the potential return that I can see from this. Does that all make sense?
That does make sense, for sure.
So touching on safety, I know this is a really big one for new people that are getting into the space as well, even people that are currently involved in the market. You hear of all these stories. 23% of Bitcoin has either been lost or mismanaged. Effectively, people have lost their front door key and they never regain access because they weren't smart enough or they weren't educated enough to understand how to back it up. And there's also other horror stories as well. I guess it's worth sharing when people are very public around their performance and what they've achieved. Sometimes they will be targeted. Unfortunately, for things like kidnapping, which is why you need to be very smart, not only how you're storing it, but what you're sharing as well, which is a scary reality, I know, for a guy over in Russia. So curious to understand, how are you currently storing your crypto, Beau, and what does that look like for you? What safety protocols do you have in place?
So the first thing for me, I used to store everything on one big centralized exchange. That was just early days, and it wasn't crazy money, so I never really cared too much. I now have maybe, I think, 20% in a centralized exchange, and that's just because I'm able to stake through that as well. So I'm staking on a centralized exchange, and then I've got the rest across a bunch of different wallets like MetaMask and Daedalus wallet. I don't have any like cold storage crypto or anything, and then so with like what is it? Like passwords and stuff for all that are all like physical copies. I have physical copies of those. One that's like deep storage, and then one that's a little bit more easily accessible. And I just make backup. So I've got two paperback books essentially, which may or may not be it's not the best call, but I didn't want to keep screenshots on my phone and do it that way. But
well, you've made a good start, and there's obviously some cracks that I can help hopefully feel for you
yeah.
there. So
Sure.
number one, the thing that I hear about a lot is people saying, I don't have much money in crypto, therefore I don't really care. Now, what I want to explain is, from a psychological perspective, if you know that your foundation of your house is weak or broken, you're not going to want to build much on top of that. So it's kind of counterintuitive to say I'll sort my safety out when I've got money. You won't ever receive and really create the amount of wealth that you want if you haven't gone to the extent of really understanding your safety first. Safety first is the saying, right? So with that being said, the next thing is, how do you break that down? Understand that you've got someone in exchange that you're staking, and you can stake in other ways, which through things that may be a lot more secure than holding it actually on a centralized exchange as such. I understand holding it on a centralized exchange, or just an exchange in general, which generally would be centralized because you can't hold it on a DEX, so decentralized. It's good if you're moving your money in and out, or you're about to do a transaction. But if you're kind of storing it for the longer term, it's not a good idea, which I think Beau is clearly aware of, which is why he's got it in different ways. The other forms that Beau's talking about, MetaMask, is certainly an added layer of security, but again, it's still connected to the internet, and there's certainly risks involved with that. So you can link up your Ledger device, which is a cold storage wallet, which is the safest way, and you can connect that through to your MetaMask wallet, which for me is an added layer of security to basically manage your transactions through there, and it all has to be done through the cold storage device. The Daedalus wallet, Exodus, these are all software-based wallets, meaning again they're still connected to the internet, susceptible to being hacked. It's quite unlikely. That's what I like about cryptocurrencies, the decentralized nature of it, that the likelihood of someone coming and pinpointing you, it will cost the hacker more to actually hack your money. Unless they knew that you had a large quantity of money, then naturally it is going to be a viable venture for them, unfortunately, to pursue. So the final piece of the puzzle is, once you do have something like a Ledger device set up, which is your cold storage device, removing it offline, the next thing that you really want to have in place from there is how you manage your recovery. So as Beau mentioned, he's got it written down on some paper in some books on his shelf, or wherever they are. So the problem with that, number one, if something happened to Beau, then what might happen to his crypto? So has he passed that information on to someone else? Maybe, maybe not. And if they did, would they really understand how to use it if it's just a combination of words, unless he's explicitly sat down with them and said, this is what you need to understand, this is how it works. Naturally, writing something down on a bit of paper, paper burns, paper turns to paper mache. It's no good in the book at home, effectively, if Beau decides to go traveling somewhere and he loses his Ledger device or Trezor, whatever he decides to purchase, which I'm sure he will do after today. And from there, it's then, I've lost my device, I'm on the other side of the world, I need to regain access to my assets. How can I do this right now? Well, unless his parents or someone knows where the details are at home and they can physically go in and open it, then naturally there's a risk that he might have to end his Bahama holiday early in order to fly back home. And we know how quickly the crypto market moves, so naturally that's not necessarily going to be the best or the safest way to do it. So what you really want to have set up is the ability to access your data anywhere in the world at any point in time, and also pass that data over to someone else, but in a managed way, where you're not just saying, here's the data, here's how it works, because I've heard of, unfortunately, scenarios where things like partners have split up and someone's run off with the crypto. So you might want to set it up in a different way here, where it's going to be in a time lock release vault, meaning that you share the data, but you're not fully sharing access. One thing that's really helped me in crypto advance more and more is that I never have to trust anyone. because I've got certain protocols in place where I can share data without giving people access. Or if we think about investing in opportunities, I don't need to trust anyone else's opinion because I know where to go and access the data, where to access the information. Therefore, I don't need to go on things like YouTube, fortunately, anymore, because I was certainly caught up in the hype back in the day of here's the latest and greatest top 5 cryptos, and I remember it all too well because it hasn't changed still from today. So does that give you a bit more clarity on how that works, but also the importance of it?
Absolutely. And it's been in the back of my head. I know that I needed to get some cold storage stuff like done, and I know that like a book on a shelf ultimately is a book on a shelf. I'm like, oh well, I know where that is, and it's all there. But yeah, I do need to step it up. Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. And can you see, because it was a big game changer for me, can you see that if you don't step your security up, then you're not going to want to really invest more into the space purely because you won't have the confidence and certainty behind it. It's
a different way of looking at it. I was looking at it from the other way.
But
you're right.
100%. Yeah, it's very interesting. Absolutely. And in terms of psychology then, because that's something that we've touched on, for me this is the absolute game changer. We've helped create clients from 198k to 15 million in less than a year. It is one of the highest performing clients that we've had. We generally will have $1 million client check in with me almost every single week. And they range, they're not just finance or IT professionals. We've had ex-builders who are retired, all the way through to kind of younger people that have made a significant change, and now they do this full time because they've got a process. But the big thing is they've developed their mentality to firstly accept in that amount of wealth, because if you go from not having a lot to having a lot very quickly, often people don't manage that too well in the process of that growth, and they end up rejecting opportunities and sabotaging themselves. So what kind of, you've mentioned about FOMO investing. What do you have in place to kind of mitigate that risk? How are you developing yourself? What have you done there to kind of allow you to step to the next level? Or is that something that you're still a bit unsure about how to develop in?
What you mean, like in regards to like my mindset?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, for me, I don't know. For me, I'm crypto. For me, is a bit of or in cryptocurrency investing is just. It started off as a bit of a hobby, and it's turned into actually quite a successful investment strategy at the moment, or an investment. You know, it's something that I enjoy looking into, and I enjoy researching, and I understand the tech, and so I find it quite fun, just naturally to follow along. The money and the money side of it is, I haven't actually given it too much thought, to be honest, of like where I'm wanting it to go, or at what point am I going to be happy with, and that's my goal, and then I'll pull out at that point of when I'm, you know, when I'm a millionaire or a billionaire. At this point, it's I'm probably haven't gone that quite meta with my where I want to end up. So then my mindset's probably to be real, like I haven't given it enough thought just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the saying, failing to plan is planning to fail, as such.
Yeah, sure.
And what this can mean within cryptocurrency is it's like any area that you're investing in, anything that you do. If you can understand why you're doing something and what the result is that you're looking to achieve, it helps you to start mapping things out, visualizing, embodying, living, and embracing effectively what that might feel like. So then you can start to dial in on exactly what it is that you want. A lot of people tend to get into crypto because they make money. Cool, absolutely, understand that. You make money, and because you don't have any clarity on why you're making money, it's just, I like the thought of maybe buying a new house or buying a sports car or whatever it is, but you haven't defined that. So what often happens is people make a colossal amount of money in this space in very short periods of time, but they keep holding and they keep pushing for more, because they don't know what they're actually investing towards. If you say, okay, I want to buy a $3 million house, and I've looked at it, it's up in Noosa, and it's got this many bedrooms, and it looks out over this, and I've actually gone around and seen and viewed the houses, then it's like, okay, well, in order for that to happen, what does your crypto balance need to get to? Maybe you want it to get to 5 million as an example, and then you can say, I'll take 3 of that and obviously pay some tax on it. And then from there, I'll still have some money in the market that I can use to reinvest. And you might decide to do that through specific times of market, as in if we go through a correction, or if you believe there's a significant correction coming up, it's the opportune time to transition out. So one thing that's really helped me, and the same with running the business as well, is why. Simon Sinek has written an incredible book starting with why, understanding why are you doing something. And when times do get challenging, when it's maybe the market doesn't perform the way that you expect, and you've got to keep pushing through to develop your knowledge and insights so you can get better results from it. If you're always tying that back into why am I doing this? Well, it's to improve, I don't know, the amount of time that I have so I can spend more quality time with my family, or it's really important to me that I want to be in a position where I can give back and provide for others or a community, and this is what I want to do there, and this is how much I need. When you get really specific with exactly what it is that you want, that's going to help parts of what you're driving towards and give you clarity on that. Pulling in other things as well, I love to be really expansive in different areas of my life because I find it's very transferable into cryptocurrency. So one thing that I'm doing is I've got an Ironman, which is 2.5 weeks pretty much today or tomorrow, over in Bustleton in Perth, which is going to be, it's obviously a huge test for me, but the work's already done in the sense that I train every single day for that, and some days it's up to 8 hours that we'll be out riding or running, and going through that really intensive, expansive mentality makes it very easy for me to drop 6 or 7 figures into a single trade in crypto and not blink an eye at it, because I've constantly pushed and challenged myself in different ways as well. Other experiences as well, I'm very holistic when it comes to investing, and certainly teaching around how to be an elite investor and improve your results. Meditation is a really big part of what I do. So I like to start every single day with Wim Hof, which is just a simple breathing technique, which you can go on YouTube, or you can go to some of his online seminars that he runs now as well. And it's a way of flooding your body full of oxygen, getting peace of mind, and your breath work is all connected to your emotion. So if you can really manage your emotion, then it removes that FOMO from the market. Or if you feel like you're about to FOMO in, you say, cool, let me go and do 3 rounds of Wim Hof and reset, realign, rebalance, so I'm not short, sharper breath and I'm triggering, which you'll start to realize when you are short and sharper breath, you start to, that means when you're in a more panicky, more intense state. So be really in tune with your breathing and where you're at, and that's what's going to help you be a lot more grounded and level-headed within investing in general. Other things that I've done are things like Vipassana. So go away, do a 10-day meditation retreat where you sit in silence, meditate for 12 hours a day. It sounds like I don't know, a fun retreat. It's probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. I went back and did it a second time because I found so much value in that experience. And the second time around, you can actually sit in a cell which is soundproof, pitch black, and you can sit in there for 8 hours a day, which is extremely intense, but it helps me to really ground myself and purify effectively myself, get the toxins out of my mentality, and realign and reconnect again. What's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing? How do I want to impact other people? How can I make effectively a significant difference on people's lives? But when it comes to the investing side of things, I'm so grounded, so level-headed that I don't get triggered by things, and not all trades are going to go exactly the way that you anticipate. So it's how do you deal with that? How quickly can you overcome it? How quickly can you get to the outcomes of where you want to go? And I guess ticking off another box as well, because I think it's good to get insight into really the fundamentals of what makes an elite investor from a mental standpoint, habits. So often we create habits within our life which are good, bad, indifferent. And what I like to do is understand what habits do I currently have, that are serving me well? What habits do I have that are clearly not serving me well, and how can I remove those bad habits and replace them with something that's going to be really effective for me? So things like, I don't know, going on Facebook as an example and scrolling through that for half an hour a day, which unfortunately a lot of people do. It can be very addictive, and I think they've realised that. The Social Dilemma is a great documentary around it, so I'm not saying anything that people don't already know. Using that half an hour of your time, let's say you, instead of having Facebook as an app on your phone, you deleted that off and you installed a crypto news app instead, and you went through that for half an hour a day. That could be a really good use of your time instead. So linking these things up and then saying, what am I doing with each day? I want to get into crypto today. I've got half an hour. Do I really know what I'm going to do with this session, or am I kind of rolling into my day saying, right, I'm going to get involved in crypto, and like, what do I need to do right now? And then you go on YouTube, you end up spending 2 hours watching mindless videos, getting more confused, rather than having a structured process or a weekly plan as such, which is something that we help all of our clients build out. I find these are the tools that are really effective as well. A lot. A lot of pieces to the puzzle, but it's quite simple, really. It's like anything. There feels like a lot, but you understand what the core piece is. How do I get really efficient and effective with my time? And then how do I implement this? Because it's all down to implementation. If you don't action something, naturally you're not going to get the result on it. So you want to make it as easy as possible for you to get the result, rather than setting yourself up for failure, which unfortunately a lot of us tend to do at times. And I think the other thing is external support. And I don't just say this because I'm a coach in cryptocurrency. I've got a coach for all different areas of my life. I've got a relationship coach, not because I've got a bad relationship, but because I want an incredible relationship and I want to find ways of constantly improving. For the Ironman, the first thing that I did is I went out and found the best coach that I could find to train me through the process, so I didn't injure myself or not perform to the level that I could. So simple things like this is what will help through other people's experience. My Ironman coach has done 16 Ironmans. I've done 0. I've done a couple of half Ironmans. So clearly his knowledge and insight is going to be far greater than mine. And that's what 7 years of my personal experience in crypto, but 18 years across our team, brings into educating and informing our clients to be at the forefront of everything, learn from our mistakes, but also fast track to the outcomes of what you really desire.
Mate, that's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And any questions that you have for me that I don't know, that you're thinking, or you probably think that most people out there are thinking the same thing, that you want some insight on?
I think I would love would love to pick your brain with your sort of, do you see cryptocurrency being an investment for the rest of your life, or is this something that you're jumping on for a bit now and then you'd move that into, say, the more traditional stuff like real estate, stocks, bonds, precious metals, if they go that far? Or is this something that's you think is completely here to stay long term and is a good call long term, or what does that look like? Yeah, absolutely. So breaking it down into a number of factors. So the first thing I'll talk about is the natural evolution of money, because I think that's the most obvious place to go. How we've transitioned through different ways of basically communicating value. That's all money is. Money is just a concept. And all the different things that have been used for money is an extension of money. It's a way of representing money, what we've defined as money, which is just the agreeance and belief that something has value. So the natural evolution is to digitize it, and that's effectively what we're moving into. I think the big shift for me is that we're moving into a much more decentralized way of living, and people are buying into that rather than being governed and controlled. And we obviously see the challenges that we go through with the money printing and interest rates and everything. So I absolutely can see that the problems that crypto is solving will override a lot of the challenges
that our current monetary system is having, and they've kind of backed themselves into such a corner from the extent of printing and cutting of interest rates that they've done so far, which puts them in a bit of a predicament. So that's one component to it. The other components is how it brings such efficiency into the way that we do transactions and the way that we exchange value. So before we were talking about real estate and being able to communicate directly where money will go into escrow, and as soon as that's been released, then it will basically the property sale will trigger too. So I think we're just warming up in terms of the value that's being identified. Absolutely, I think some things are completely overvalued. Out there, we spoke about NFTs earlier today, and some things are just a JPEG, and I get that it can be classed as art, but I do think if you're printing 1,000 copies of a monkey with a skeleton and a hat on his head with a joint hanging out of his mouth, it's like in different colours. I think maybe that's a bit of an overinflated craze, but I do think there's a lot of value that's going on in between all of that will create, I guess, a more sustainable future. So when I think about cryptocurrencies and how long they can be here for, we're just getting started. The boat's still in the shed being painted as such, and we still have no idea how advanced this is going to become. I remember all the time thinking back where I'm at the forefront of crypto and I know pretty much everything that's going on, and then someone's like, oh, have you heard of DeFi? What are you doing in DeFi? And I'm like, what's DeFi? What does this mean? Wow. Decentralized finance. And then next thing I'm down another rabbit hole, getting insight from other people in the space that are building projects. And so it's constant change and development. And if we're evolving at this speed, the reason that things die is because they don't evolve and they don't change and develop. And that's what we're seeing a lot within crypto. It's just developing at such a rapid speed where it's like, okay, this market's inefficient, let's overcome that. There's a problem here, let's solve that. This is outdated now, let's supersede it. And that's where a lot of this value is really coming from, and how we're able to change and develop so quickly. So that to me is the real exciting part. In terms of from an investment perspective, because you were talking about transitioning into real estate and other opportunities, whilst the market's hot and you know what you're doing, for me personally, it doesn't make sense to diversify. Diversification to me, and again, there's all different opinions around this. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong, but if I know what I'm doing in a space and I'm in a space that's far outperforming anything else in terms of assets that I can invest in right now, I would be losing money if I bought a property. I would be losing money if I invested in gold or silver, which gold barely beat inflation. From the stats that we were looking at recently, obviously it's performed slightly in more recent times, but the performance of it's been so insignificant. I remember doing a breakdown of a 10K investment over 12 months, and 118K was crypto in 12 months. The S&P 500 was 3,900 profit. The ASX 200 was $1,900 profit, and gold was negative 750 at the time. This was recently. Obviously those figures have changed, but you can see it doesn't make sense for me to diversify. A lot of people ask me about my exit strategy and what I'm going to do there, so I'll share some high-level insight to help. So the first thing is exiting, obviously naturally at the right time from the market, having the strategy around that, and that's if we do come to a point where I see the opportune time to exit out, which might not be anytime soon, but potentially it could be. Then from there, the next things to really understand is what you're going to do. You can transition naturally into property, or you can look at gold, diversifying. What I believe is a really good opportunity is to move it into something like a stablecoin USDC, not USDT. A stablecoin is just pegged effectively to something like a US dollar for USDC, meaning every one USDC there's one US dollar in reserve. Now from that, why I think that's a really good opportunity is because you can use that in a decentralized finance platform, lend it out, get 9% APY, and that's whilst the market potentially is going through some form of correction. You identify a new opportunity to re-enter back into the market, and you can do it like that whilst you're earning a good interest on it. Naturally, you don't want to put it in the bank because you're not going to make money on it. If you put it into real estate, you can make money, but it's not liquid, meaning you can't exit out of it. And if you see an opportune time to reinvest in the market, it might take you 3 months to move your money back out, which obviously isn't a good thing to do or a position to be in. So there's a gold narrative too. We've looked at the performance of those and how they've actually performed against crypto. And I think gold is a safe haven to an extent still, but I do think that the narrative is starting to really shift from gold into other opportunities like Bitcoin. But I do think it's still a staple investment, but it's just not as volatile. And if you want to make a lot of money very quickly, then naturally you want a volatile asset. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Beau, appreciate you jumping on. It's probably been a little bit confrontational for you, but I think it's been super useful for new people like yourselves, or people that have maybe even already started in the space, to get an understanding of some of the things that I would personally do or I am doing, and what we help our clients with as well, to be a successful investor in the space and really take it to the next level, because that's what it's about. You can perform well on your own, potentially. In a market that's going up, anyone can be successful. It's when it changes conditions, that's the thing that you really need to be in position for, but getting the confidence and certainty. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Beau, appreciate your time, mate. And if you do want to learn more about what we do, we've got our free webinar. We've got our playbook as well that you can get into, and that'll give you some really good fundamentals of how to transition into the space gracefully. And I'll drop the link below. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Ciao for now.